Let's draw some shadows. So today we're going to start by exploring the technical steps of creating a cast shadow. And we start that by drawing a circle. That circle will represent the light source. And then a vertical line attached to that circle, which represents the height of the light, right? And where the bottom of that line represents the ground plane. And then next, we will draw another line. In this case, this line is perpendicular to the height line. That line represents the direction of the light. And then we will include another line. This line sort of goes diagonally from the light source and crosses the light direction line. That line is called the angle line. And then where those two lines intersect, we're going to call that the shadow edge. Now let's apply this technique to a cube in two-point perspective. So I'm going to draw through the box a little bit just so that I can locate the corner on that back side. I've determined my light height and the direction. I'm going to draw a line from the 3 points on this ground plane that will be in shadow. Then I'm going to draw my angle line from the light source through the corresponding points on the top plane of the cube. And then I connect those points, right? Remember, these are the intersection points or the shadow edge. In this particular instance, I'm going to use hatched lines to fill in that shape, and that will represent my shadow. And again, don't forget to shade in the side of the box that is also in shadow. Recognize that I use 45-degree hatches here instead of straight lines. Now, here's an easier method for developing shadows on a primitive shape. So I have a cube in two-point perspective, and I'm going to start by drawing my light direction, right? You can see here I'm sort of drawing through the box to determine where that corner will be. Now these lines should be going all in the same direction at the same angle. Now I'm going to draw an angle line that goes through the top corresponding corners and intersect with the direction lines. What I like to do is make sure that those angle lines are the same angle, right? So all of those lines are parallel with each other. Now I am going to connect the dots and then fill in my shadow with hatch lines. And you can see here by adding the same colors I used in the more technical process of making these shadows, that basically it's the same, right? You have a light height, you have light direction, and you have a light angle. It is my opinion that this technique is easier because it sort of localizes the light source. Okay, now let's give it a try with other primitive shapes. We're going to try a very basic cylinder here. Okay, so now that I have my ellipses in somewhat good shape, I'm going to try to develop the axis of these two ellipses, right? So you see there I have this cross, and I am sort of drawing this plane within this cylinder, right? And technically there will be two planes because they are crossing each other. They're perpendicular to each other. And the reason you're doing this is because a cylinder doesn't have corners, right? So you can't necessarily just use the top corners like you did with the box. Instead, we're going to use those points because those points are the widest, I guess you could call it the diameter of the cylinder. So I'm using the same techniques, right? There's my angle line. Again, these should be about the same angle. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can try. And now you can see I'm using a marker to sort of identify those different lines. Right, so again, that will serve as my light height, and that's my light angle. And then those are the intersections, which will eventually become the shadow edge. And then I'm going to use my paper mate flare to add some hatch lines, and there's my shadow, right? And while I'm there, I'll add a bit of hatch lines on the cylinder itself just to, really show that this is a cylinder and it's sort of round. So you have that slight gradation there. And let's try another shape. How about a cone? Right, now a cone is pretty simple. It sort of starts off in the same way that our cylinder did, but because we don't have a top plane, these lines sort of just extend, and you draw one angled line from the very peak of that cone. There we have it, and then the other two lines just meet at that one point. And then hatch it in. Add a bit of detail to the cone itself. And now hatch lines just to make it all nice and pretty. And there you have it. There's your cone. Very simple. Alright, now that we've done cast shadows, we're going to do drop shadows. And technically a drop shadow is a cast shadow as well. It's just a cast shadow when the object isn't set onto the ground plane. There is a very technical way of doing this, right? And it's quite similar to what we did at the beginning of this demonstration. I am going to show you a very simple way to make a drop shadow. As you can see, I have a cube. I've extended those vertical lines down and just used those lines to make basically a plane on the ground that is representative of the bottom of that cube. I'm going to draw another one here, and this one won't be as high off of the ground plane. See, I'm extending those lines, and I'm just laying down that drop shadow. This is a very simple technique for making a drop shadow. Again, we can take all of those angles and light height and direction lines and develop drop shadows as we did in the beginning. But this is really all you need for industrial design sketching. Thanks for watching.